G'day groovers, rockers, and in between. This is Vinyl Vibes. I'm your host, Jack Hodgins. Today we are talking with former lead vocalist of the Strawberry Alarm Clock, Paul Marshall. The band are best known for their 1967 number one hit, Incense and Peppermints. Paul joined a couple of years after this hit, but became an important part of the band as he wrote a lot of the group's later singles. Some of the songs Paul wrote for the band included I'm Coming Home and Girl from the City, both of which were featured in the 1970 film Beyond the Valley of Dolls. He remained with the group to their breakup in 1971. After the Alarm Clock, Paul remained in music, and today is a longtime member of the alternative country band Icy Hawks in LA. G'day Paul, and welcome to Vinyl Vibes.
Well, thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me here. It's really an honor.
Oh, it's an honor to have you on the show. And look, let's begin at the very beginning. You were born in Southern California. Do you remember much about your childhood?
I do. I remember quite a bit about my childhood. I mean, this was a great place to grow up. Back in the 50s, which was when I was really a kid. Los Angeles was not the gigantic, sprawling, overbuilt, overpopulated place it is today. It was really there were empty lots and fields everywhere, and orange groves and little farms and things. So it was just a great place to be a kid growing up and being able to roam around and play and catch lizards and frogs and things like that. It was just really a great place.
Was there much music going on at the time? I mean, in like those kind of the 1950s in LA, in where you were kind of growing up, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I would say there was plenty of music. My first exposure to music was through my parents and my family, because my mom liked to sing, my dad liked to sing. They liked to listen to the pop records that they grew up on, from the 30s and 40s and some early 50s and things like that. And I would go over to my grandmother's house. We used to go over there. She didn't live too far from us, and we'd go over there about it once a week, like on the weekend maybe for dinner and just to hang out. So my family could kind of get together. And they had an old 78 RPM big old record player, and they had a stack of 78s. And they let me, as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, just have at it, and I'd sit there and just put, record after record onto the turntable and just play them and love it. Everything from, the Andrews Sisters, Rum and Coca-Cola. And I listened to, they had some orchestral stuff like the Peer Gynt Suite, one side, morning, and then the Hall of the Mountain King, which was like exciting. So I got off on that, and then I started hearing rock and roll on the radio.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, do you remember the first time hearing rock and roll? Does that memory pop up for you?
I think probably one of the first rock and roll things I heard on the radio was Elvis's "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." Hound Dog that was probably the first rock and roll record that I remember distinctly hearing and thinking to myself, "Man, this is something different. This is pretty cool." The ones that really had an effect on me were the Everly Brothers, Sam Cooke, all this stuff. See, in fact, this is something that drummer from the Kingsmen, what was his name?
Dick Peterson. Yeah.
Yeah, Dick Peterson. Something I think he mentioned that, because I listened to that interview of yours, and he mentioned how top 40 radio back then wasn't so compartmentalized, right? So you'd hear a Perry Como song, and then you'd hear a Fats Domino song. And then you'd hear some kind of orchestral thing by, I don't know, Dick Hyman or somebody. And it was just a great variety of stuff. Johnny Horton, the Battle of New Orleans, things like that. There, you could hear everything. So I remember, really liking like the Del Vikings, and that was getting into the latter period of doo-wop. I liked that sound. I liked the harmonies. I liked the fact that, 5 guys were just singing together and making these sounds. It was just thrilling to me. So all those genres spoke to me in a certain way, and I liked them all. I wanted to do that if I possibly could.
I think you were 13 when you got your first guitar. Do you remember your first guitar, like what it was? Yeah.
I don't remember the brand. It was an acoustic guitar. I had started out playing a little clarinet in like the 3rd or 4th grade, a year, and I stopped playing it. I liked it well enough. I couldn't sing while I was playing because I had this thing stuck in my mouth, and I wanted to sing. and I could only make one note at a time. Good as that sounded, I wanted a polyphonic instrument so I could play a lot of notes and chords and stuff. When the idea of a guitar became a possibility, it was like, of course, that's what I want. I can play chords, I can sing while I'm playing, so that's what I wanted. So I asked my parents to get me a guitar, and they either bought or rented me a cheap guitar with the strings, a half an inch above the fretboard, and it was painful to play. I remember my fingers bleeding. It was horrible, but I stuck with it long enough for them to see that I was serious. And then I got a playable guitar. My first playable guitar was a Gibson nylon string acoustic guitar.
Okay, and in saying that, how did you learn to play back then? I mean, did you get lessons or did you teach yourself?
I got lessons. They wanted me to have lessons, so I got lessons. The teachers back then around here, and my teacher was he was really a jazz guitar player, which wasn't really what I was interested in, but I knew I was going to learn something. And we went through, the first 4 or 5 Mel Bay guitar books, and I never became a good reader, partly because I had a good enough ear that as soon as I kind of figured out what it was doing, then I stopped paying attention to the written music and just started playing by ear. But at the same time that I was doing that, I was trying to play what I heard on the radio. And I also had a friend who played guitar too, and he showed me a few things. It was a bit of everything. Between the lessons and teaching myself and being exposed to a lot of different music, I became an adequate guitar player.
I think you formed your first band too around the same time. I think the Bushamans, I think it was called.
The Beauchamans, and it's unfortunately it was spelled the French way. And if we had spelled it B-O-hyphen-S-H-A-Y, Shay hyphen Mins, M-I-N-S, we probably would have had a better shot, because I'm sure a lot of DJs got the record and went tossed it away because they had no idea of how to pronounce the name of the band. But yeah, that band grew out of a little folk trio that my friend Vern Willis and I put together with a girl named Nancy Burba. We modeled ourselves after Peter, Paul, and Mary. Really probably the most commercially successful group of the early 60s. And beautiful. I mean, they were great, beautiful harmonies. They chose great old folk songs and songs that contemporary folk artists were writing at the time, Dylan and people like that. And so they had a great repertoire, and we learned a lot of their songs. And so we had this little folk group, little folk trio put together, and we started getting a few gigs. We were in junior high playing, PTA meetings and things like that, and little assemblies at the school. And then when we got into high school, we joined the folk music club in high school, and we met a few other people who kind of liked what we were doing, and we sort of expanded the band to 6 and then eventually 5 members. And that was the band that became the Beauchamans, that got a record deal with Bob Keane on the Mustang label.
Yeah, of course. I was just about to ask you about Bob Keane as well. I mean, that must have been pretty good for you guys. I mean, I think he discovered Ritchie Valens as well. I mean, that must have been like, how did he come to discover you guys? Yeah.
Bob had an interesting history, because he had actually been one of the first one to produce and record Sam Cooke when Sam went from gospel to pop. And then he had a contractual difficulty and he lost Sam. And then he found Ritchie Valens, and he had a big hit with Ritchie, and then Ritchie died. When he met us and we were signed by him, he had the Bobby Fuller 4. I Fought the Law and the Law Won, and a bunch of other hits. That was their biggest one. But that was contemporary with his signing us. And the way we met him was, one of our members, Lee Kriske, was a car enthusiast, and he was in a car club. And another member of the car club was a professional photographer who had been doing a lot of photography for the record industry, and he did a lot of photography for Bob Keane. And so when he heard our band play, he said, let me introduce you to this record producer, and who knows, see what happens. And that man's name was Leon Beauchamin. And that's how we got the name the Beauchamans, because his name meant a beautiful road or a beautiful way. That's what Beauchamin means, in French. So we were like, that's a cool name. That's a cool name.
Yeah.
That's how that happened. And Bob liked us, and he signed us, and we recorded. We ended up recording about 4 or 5 or maybe 6 songs with him two or three of which were released. Two were released on singles. One I wrote called My Lovin' Baby, and another song called A Field of Yellow Daisies that was written by, I believe, Charlie Rich's wife. Anyway, that's it's good, interesting stuff. But when we recorded A Field of Yellow Daisies, when the record was finished, Bob called us into the office and said, "Hey, I got your new record here. Got a copies of it for you." Handed us these records of Field of Yellow Daisies, and it said Field of Yellow Daisies by the Treetoppers. He had renamed us without consulting us. He probably realized, as well as we did at the later on, that Bo Shaman's was a difficult name to sell. So he renamed us the Treetoppers, and that's what that 45 says. It's a Field of Yellow Daisies by the Treetoppers.
Yeah, and of course, I think after the band, I think you went to USCB. Am I right on that?
After high school, I went to college at UCSB, University of California in Santa Barbara, a beautiful place. Had a lot of interesting experiences and put together, as soon as I got there, my roommate and I put together a band that was doing, basically rock and roll and folk rock covers. Met a couple other great musicians, some of whom I've, remained lifelong friends with. And we did a lot of fraternity parties and things like that. I stayed there for about a year and a half. Near the end of my sophomore year of college, I felt like I really wasn't getting anywhere. I had joined another rock and roll band called Proof Rock. That band was working around Santa Barbara, and then they moved back to LA. I just felt like the music program at Santa Barbara was still focused on very much classical music and a little bit of jazz, and nothing at all in terms of popular music or rock and roll, nothing contemporary. I felt like I really wasn't getting anywhere staying in school. So I dropped out of school. I came back down to LA, and I'd been in LA a few weeks, and the band that I had moved back down, that had also moved back down to LA with, they fired me. They said, "Paul, we think you're just too country to be in this band." Well, the fact is that when I was up in Santa Barbara, I had a kind of a musical epiphany, as it were, when I tuned in. I found on the radio, I found the country station in Santa Barbara called K-Gun, KGUN. It really drew on life's circumstances of the people that it was talking about, and it told their stories. And the lyrics, I've always been kind of a lyric guy anyway, but these lyrics really told stories in an interesting way that for some reason I just related to it, and I went, "Oh, this is great." So that was all I listened to. So I spent a couple of months in Los Angeles wondering what was going to happen next, and that's when I joined a rock and roll band called the Strawberry Alarm Clock.
And of course, you mentioned you joined Strawberry Alarm Clock. I mean, how did that kind of come to be for you? You moved here, and you got, the band you moved with kind of, fired you, and then you joined this massive band at the time. I mean, how does that all unfold? Yeah.
I'm glad you asked. Living in LA was really cool, because it afforded all these different opportunities that I would never have had, in a little town in Kansas or Des Moines, Iowa, or someplace like that, because Los Angeles was a happening place, musically especially. And what happened to me was, so I'd been fired by this band, kind of wondering what I was going to do next, and I was visiting my girlfriend's brother. I was over at his house. He was in an apartment, and across the hall there was a party going on. And so I left my girlfriend's brother's apartment. I walked across the hall, because you could do that. You could walk into a party in 1969. I walked into the party, and the party was raging, and it was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of things going on. And I just kind of joined in the fun, and I started talking to a few people, and I sat down on the couch, and a guy was sitting next to me, and in the middle of our conversation, he said, "I got a real problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, I got a band, and we're supposed to go on the road in 2 weeks, and our lead singer just quit. Do you know anybody who can sing lead?" I said, "Well, yes, I can." He said, "You can? Oh, great." And he took out a little piece of paper, and he said, "Come to this address on Monday night." And he handed it to me, and I showed up there, and that's how I met the band, the Strawberry Alarm Clock, in 1969. and I did an audition, and I got the gig. I became the Strawberry Alarm Clock's lead singer, and stayed with the band until we broke up in 1971. Touring and recording, being in the movie Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, just a whole wealth of experiences. And at that time, now I'm thinking, you know what? That was a good idea, dropping out.
Yeah.
Dropping out of college. Look at here. Here I am in a million-selling rock and roll band, 19 years on the road, and life was good. So
Yeah.
I had a great time. And I have to say that, I've been in dozens and dozens and dozens of bands. That band, that particular group of people, Ed King, Lee Freeman, Gene Gunnels, and me, we got along so well, musically and personally. I would have been happy to stay with that band forever. So it was just a great experience, both musically and personally.
I mean, in saying that too, I mean, like it sounds like you guys got along, and I mean, what were the gigs like for you? Like, do any memories pop up for you about playing live with the band?
Quite a few. I mean, we did a lot of tours, we did a lot of gigs. Some of the standout gigs were playing at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, their big auditorium. I don't know how many people it held, thousands. And we played 2 gigs there with the Iron Butterfly
Yeah.
in Agata Davida. So I think one night we opened for them, and then one night they opened for us. It was hugely attended. It went great. I remember doing gigs with Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. That was fun. My first gig with the band was with the Turtles at a big California state fair. So we did a lot of good gigs. And I remember also we played a lot of gymnasiums and a lot of armories. And those were difficult gigs because the sound was never good at gigs like that. I mean, occasionally, like a gig like the one in Alabama at the University of Alabama, that was pretty good, pretty decent sound. Most of the time we were traveling with an inadequate PA system. I was just singing my guts out trying to be heard. The armories and the gymnasiums were just these giant echoing hard surfaces, so you couldn't really hear very well. Doesn't mean it wasn't fun. I had a good time.
Because you joined after the Good Morning Sunshine album that they did. Am I right on that?
Yes, I joined right after the Good Morning Sunshine album. Their lead singer on that album was Jim Pitman. He was in the band for that one album. He had been in a Florida band called the Nightcrawlers. They had a minor hit called Little Black Egg, which I had heard. It got national play. I heard it in California, and he was a great singer. And in fact, he was a great singer with a genuinely high voice, and he had written some songs. And then when I joined the band, I had to sing his songs, and that was a struggle, I'm telling you, because I'm more of a natural baritone, and so I was hitting the highest notes I could possibly hit. And then eventually we moved on. Our repertoire changed to the point of where I could write some of my own songs, and we could write songs as a band that suited my range a little better. Which, by the way, that was one of the interesting things about country music, was that most of these country singers were singing about an octave lower than the rock singers. All sang in these very high voices, high ranges. So I heard that these guys sound like men.
Yeah.
They're singing in deep baritone voices. So that attracted me too to the country music. But anyway, after we got through the Jim Pitman material, things worked out better for me in terms of the range of the songs. They fit mine. And that's, even I was writing songs higher then that I could possibly sing now, like the 2 songs I wrote that got in the movie Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, Girl from the City and I'm Coming Home. Man, I try to sing those songs now. They're too high.
Yeah, okay. And look, and yeah, I was listening to some of those songs, and Girl from the City, another song of yours that I was like, this is a good song. And I mean, how did that song come to be? Did you write it especially for the movie? Because it's in the movie Beyond the Valley of Dolls. I mean, did you...
Girl from the City? It's so appropriate for the movie that I'm not surprised they chose it, But I didn't really write it for the movie. I was trying to write songs for the band to do. That's how I came to write I'm Coming Home and Girl from the City. And Girl from the City was actually written as a kind of a parody, because I was told you I've been listening to a lot of country music, right? Well, in country music, there's kind of a theme of how country girls are so great, and country girls are the best lovers, and country girls, they'll cook, they'll do all this natural, they're just so great. And I thought, well, that's funny. I'm going to write a song about how great city girls are, which the Beach Boys had kind of already done with their California Girls, but it wasn't quite as specific, So I wrote "Girl from the City," and I thought it was kind of funny and not a bad song. Ed King did the arrangement. Ed was quite a great musician, and he was really visionary when it came to arranging. And he was the de facto musical director for the Strawberry Alarm Clock. He kind of decided, what would be a good bass part for Lee to play, and what would be a good rhythm guitar part for me to play, or sometimes he'd have me play twin leads with him. And so he did this great arrangement for "Girl from the City," and it just made the song, come together. So, his story. He went on to be part of Lynyrd Skynyrd and
absolutely, yeah.
Right, Sweet Home Alabama and all that.
Do you remember much about like recording in those days, like in the 60s? I mean, like, does any memories pop up for you for there?
I remember a couple of the studios that the Alarm Clock recorded at. We recorded at a studio called Crystal, and we recorded at TT&G. We called it TT&G. I think technically it was just TTG. That's where we cut some of the stuff for the movie. And at Crystal, I remember we recorded California Day. I don't know if you ever heard that one.
Yeah.
That was a song that my girlfriend's brother wrote. A great song. In fact, that's probably my favorite of all the Alarm Clock songs that I did with the band. It's California Day. I just think it's a quality song, and I love the way the record sounds. The studios we recorded at were top studios. We also did some stuff right after the band broke up. I did some stuff using a lot of the same band players, and we recorded at Gold Star. That was with Bob Keane, actually. Did a bunch of different studios with him. The studios were great, and I had already had some studio experience from working with Bob at his, Selma Street studios, where Bobby Fuller recorded and where he cut My Lovin' Baby and Field of Yellow Daisies. So I just tried to play my parts right and sing the best I could, and play the thing that Ed thought would be great, and most of the time I think it worked out all right. And then later on, when I became a bass player, I got called to play in lots of different studios, and playing in the studios is a lot of fun for me. I like it. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of like less pressure because, well, unlike the way they used to record in the 40s and 50s, by the time we got into the late 60s, if you missed a note, you could punch it in. You could make little corrections if you needed to. So that took a lot of pressure off, and I liked the usually the Alarm Clock rehearsed a lot before we recorded, so we had a pretty good idea of what we were going to do when we got into the studio. And sometimes that happened with other bands and other sessions, and then sometimes after I became a session player, I'd get a call for a session, and I wouldn't have any idea what I was going to do. I'd just show up and, okay, here's the song. Somebody would start playing a song. That's the song. Okay, let's cut it. I take a few notes while the artist is going over the song, and then let's cut the song.
I mean, you mentioned that Strawberry Alarm Clock was, you enjoyed your time in there, and I mean it's great, which is great to hear. I mean, and saying that, why did it come to an end? Like, if you're all having such a good time, what happened?
Very, very good question. So what happened was, about a year into my being with the band, the record company, Uni Records, decided that they weren't doing as well with us as they had hoped to do, and they dropped our contract. So now we had no record deal. We went around to different record companies and made some proposals and tried to get some interest going. Couldn't kind of get anything going. So we didn't have a record deal. We still had gigs out on the road, but the gigs, which had originally all been pretty good gigs, bigger venues with a lot of attendees and decent pay, kind of started to not be so good. We started to struggle actually making the tours pay. And so that was the biggest factor in us deciding that we had to do something else to, we had to figure out a way to make it work if we were going to remain a band. And two of us, me and Lee Freeman, we wanted to stay in LA, keep giving it a shot here and figure something out, meet some people and do whatever we had to do. And Ed and Gene thought we'd have a better chance if we went back to the South. And so that was kind of, well, you guys want to go there and we want to stay here. So guess that's it. It's been fun. So it was the most amicable breakup you could imagine. Not like the kind of breakups you see, in the documentaries and the rockumentaries where people are yelling at each other and hating each other, and messing around with, somebody's wife and all that, but then doing too much drugs and all that. Not that we didn't do, a few drugs here and there, but we didn't have any animosity. We just couldn't figure out how to make it work, and we had this big disagreement over where to base, because where they wanted to go is 2,500 miles away from where we wanted to be. There was just no other choice. We had to break up. So that was the end of that band, but it sure was fun, and it worked out great for Ed, obviously.
Yeah.
And Gene was fine too. He went back to the South where he was from originally. And then he came back to LA and he joined the Everly Brothers and played drums with them. He played drums with a lot of people for a long time before he finally got kind of out of the music business. So what happened was the Alarm Clock broke up. So I'd been playing like second guitar with Ed King. So I thought I was a better guitar player. I thought I was a pretty good guitar player. And I auditioned for some gigs. I auditioned for the Everly Brothers as a guitar player. At the same time, a great drummer who I played with in college and who had been the Alarm Clock drum roadie named Mike Porter, he auditioned for the Everly Brothers. Gene Gunnels, who had been the drummer for the Strawberry Alarm Clock, auditioned for the Everly Brothers. And then I auditioned as guitar player. The Everly Brothers music director at the time was Warren Zevon. And we auditioned at SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals, biggest rehearsal studio in LA at the time, and maybe still. And I auditioned as a guitar player. Gene got the gig as a drummer. I did not get the gig as a guitar player. And when I heard the guy who got the gig, when I heard him play, his name was Waddy Wattell. Familiar with that name? He ended up playing with Linda Ronstadt for years and years and years, and played with a bunch of different people. Great guitar player. And I heard him play, and I said, well, no wonder I didn't get the gig. Listen to this guy play. He plays way better than me. And I said to myself, I always liked what the bass does in a band. I think I'm going to get a bass and see what I can do. Heck, I'll only have to play one note at a time. Surely I can do that. So I bought a bass and I started playing bass around town in country bands because I liked country, and country bass was, or at least seemed to be, pretty easy. Boom, 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 boom. You do that a bunch of times and you pretty much got the song. Well, turns out if you're a bass player who can sing, you're never out of work. And as soon as I learned how to play the bass well enough to get through some songs and sing the harmony at the same time, man, the phone never stopped ringing. And that's how I became a bass player.
And of course, I think you mentioned it was late 80s there. I think in the late 80s too, you did a lot of songwriting work as well. You got a few of your songs that you've written with some other people on some albums. Like I think you got, there was a song you wrote called Someone Believed, that got on Juice Newton's album. Yeah, take me through how all that kind of unfolded, yeah.
That one got on Juice Newton's album, and it also got on the Highway 101 album, first record they did. I had written the song with Johnny Pierce and his wife Joanna, and Johnny had been playing bass with Juice Newton. Of course, I mean, it's so much about, who you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the kind of access that you have when you play with somebody like that. So he presented the song to Juice, and at the same time I presented the song to Highway 101 because several of the band members of Highway 101 were really good friends of mine who I'd been playing with for years and years. Jack Daniels, the guitar player, was my closest buddy in that band, and I played him the song, and so he showed that to the band, and they thought it would be perfect for their first album. So that ended up being the big ballad on the first Highway 101 album. And at the same time, Juice Newton put it on her album. And then they had a bunch of squabbles between Juice and Highway 101. Why are you doing that song? We're doing that song. What are you doing? So, but I tried to, stay out of that. It was an honor to have, a song on two really major artists at the same time. The song stands up. I like the song.
Yeah, no, I think it certainly does stand up. And I mean, it must be great as a songwriter when people do record your songs. I mean, is that a pretty meaningful thing for you? Like, especially when they're major artists too, yeah.
It's a very meaningful thing. It makes me feel great. Sometimes they're not even major artists, a lot of minor artists and up and coming artists, or they hope they're up. They hope they're up and they're coming. And anytime somebody records my songs, I just think it's a terrific honor. And if nothing else, then I've got one more version of it to pass around to somebody else who may want to record it. It's amazing how a good song has really does have a long life, long life expectancy and potential if it's if it's presented to the right person at the right time. That's kind of what it's all about. So yeah, that was good. That was good. And at about around the same time, Patty Loveless recorded one of my songs too.
Working Man's Hands, was that the song?
Working Man's Hands is the name of the song, yeah. That was written with the same writing team that wrote Someone Believed. And Johnny had a publisher who evidently had some connection with Patty Loveless, so we were able to present that to Patty. Yeah, she did a great version of it too. I didn't make much money off of the Patty version because that was on the album that she released right before she really hit it big. So it didn't sell that many, but it was still a great thing to have her recorded. I mean, she's a terrific singer, and that's really something when you hear your song, a song that you wrote, being performed by an artist who you admire and respect. And you think that, yeah, they got it. They got the idea of the song. They did it with heart, and it really works. Yeah, it's wonderful.
I See Hawks in LA, the band you've been with for so long. I mean, how did that all kind of come to be? I mean, it was because if you're there with, like, it would have been the early 2000s when you kind of joined, right? Yeah.
Yeah, another good story. So I was working at a regular recurring country show called Ronnie Mac's Barn Dance, a popular kind of roots music. It's a live show. It's kind of a showcase, almost like a showcase deal, where Ronnie would open the show with his band, and then he'd have like 3 or 4 or 5 different guest artists do 4 or 5 songs each, and then close the show with his band, and then a big rockabilly jam. Well, I became his bass player, so I was on the show every week. And one week, one of the guest artists was this brand new band called I See Hawks in LA. And I knew almost everybody in the band. They had David Jackson on bass and Brantley Kearns on fiddle. The only people I didn't know were the 2 kind of lead guys in the band, Rob Waller and Paul Lax. Well, they played this set and I was knocked out, man. They had cool harmonies, interesting songs with interesting lyrics. And I was just very attracted to the whole thing that they were doing. I sat and listened. You guys are great. A week later, I was at another club in LA, and they were there again. They played again, except this time the bass player wasn't there. They had no bass player. And so after their set, I went up to them and I said, "Hey, Paul Marshall, I saw you at the barn dance last week. You were great, Hey, but David Jackson isn't with you tonight. You have no bass player." I said, "Wow, the next time David can't make it, call me up." I said, I'm way better than no bass player at all. And so they took that to heart. A week later, they called me up. They said, "We got another gig. David can't make it. Will you be our bass player for that night?" Sure. So I did it, and then I did it again, and then I did it again. And then David was out, and I was the bass player, and I've been their bass player for over 20 years now. Like I told you about the alarm clock, about us getting along personally, having some interesting things to say musically, getting along musically, enjoying and respecting everybody else's contribution. It's great. So I guess I'm probably stuck with this band.
Have you got any gigs coming up for I See Hawks in LA? Is there any like concerts, any tours? Yeah.
We have a tour coming up in August. We're going to Northern California. We're going to be playing a club in Sacramento. We're playing a house concert in, I guess it's the Santa Cruz area. It's kind of like a farm out in the country. And then we're playing up in Mendocino. That's a tour we have coming up, Northern California. We just got back from a tour in South Carolina and North Carolina. We did a little gig a couple nights ago with one of the biggest song circles I've ever played with. Sessions keep coming in, and fortunately the phone keeps ringing and I stay busy. We might be playing at a local club called the Cinema Bar on August 5th. Yeah, and then after that we go to Northern California for this little short
Yeah.
tour.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned your session work there. I mean, where can people go for you to play on their records? I mean, is there any, like, if they specifically want you, like, where can they go to get you to play on their records?
Oh, paulmarshall.net is
Fantastic.
my website, and I think I have contact information there. I try to keep the calendar up to date, but I know at the moment I'm a little behind. I have to update it. But yeah, anybody who wants me to play on their project, I'm happy to do it. I can do it here. I can do it wherever they want to do it. It's good. It's good to have the technology now where people can send me tracks and I can play on them here and send the tracks back to them. Harmony vocals, whatever people want. Sometimes I'll do lead vocals for people. Unfortunately, I've been staying really busy, so.
I mean, are you working on any, like, music of your own, like any? Because I know you had an album in 2000. I think it was called Weed and Water. Are you working on? Yeah, you're working on anything else at the moment, like for yourself? I mean, yeah.
I'm not specifically working on anything for myself. Making an album or a CD or a personal project. It's not the making of it that's so hard as it is what do you do with it when you're done. I don't think I want to have boxes of CDs sitting in my garage anymore because people appear to be leaving that format a little bit, and the whole process of doing electronic promotion, it's not what I want to do. I want to make the music and then have somebody else handle all that. And since I don't have somebody else to do all that, I'm less motivated to actually create a project for myself. But what I like to do, present these songs to other people to put on their projects or to put in their films or their television shows. And then I don't have to worry about the promotion.
Yeah.
So it's hard enough just following up on all the little details that you have to do to make sure that you're properly protected and copyrighted, filed with all the companies that are going to track the airplay and track the usages of it and track the sales of it. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, all I ever wanted to do was play guitar and sing, So in the first iterations of that with Bob Keane and Mustang Records and then with the alarm clock and that kind of thing, I didn't have to worry about it. And then when I became a sideman playing bass for people, same thing. I didn't have to worry about promotion or I didn't have to find the gigs. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. All I had to do was show up with my bass, maybe know the songs. And a lot of times I didn't even have to know the songs. I just figured that out when we started playing,
Yeah.
So that's my ideal situation for me. Just focus on the music.
I mean, just as a final, final question, I was just kind of thinking this. I mean, maybe not for like your own music, but definitely for I think for I See Hawks in LA. I think. Have you ever thought about getting some vinyl records pressed? I mean, because those are outselling CDs now. Have you ever kind of? Yeah, I think the band would be perfect for that. Yeah.
Yes. We talk about that frequently. It may happen. Up till now, it's sort of been a little bit cost prohibitive because it cost a lot to do the vinyl, a lot more than it did to do a CD. But I think those costs are coming down a little bit because more and more people are doing it. It's a possibility that one of the next Icy Hawks projects might come out in vinyl. That would be great.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for making the time to talk with me today. It's been wonderful.
Jack, I can't tell you what an honor it is for you to be, interviewed here with you. And I listen to, what you do, and you're just doing a great thing. And so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
That was former lead singer of the Strawberry Alarm Clock, Paul Marshall. To check out Paul's longtime band, Icy Hawks in LA, you can head to the band's website at icyhawks.com. Remember to share this episode with other music fans, and if you really enjoyed this edition, let us know. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Vinyl Vibes, and to all you music lovers out there, stay groovy.